It was a warm Wednesday afternoon when Captain Naomi Bennett stepped out of her unmarked police car. She had just returned from a meeting downtown, her crisp uniform gleaming under the sun. Naomi was one of the highest-ranking officers in her precinct, having earned the respect of her peers through years of hard work and dedication. A tall, confident black woman in her late 30s, she commanded every room she entered. Her sharp gaze could assess a situation instantly, and her ability to lead was unparalleled. Today, she was stopping by a local convenience store to grab a quick snack before heading back to the station. The store was a small one, tucked into the corner of an aging strip mall, but it was a favorite spot of hers, a place where she had often chatted with the cashier about the neighborhood. As she entered the store, a slight buzz of unease filled the air, but she shrugged it off. Maybe it was the tension of the day, or maybe she was just tired. Inside, the cashier, an older man named Mr. Ahmed, greeted her with a smile, recognizing her immediately. "Good to see you again, Captain Bennett," he said, nodding respectfully. "Hey, Mr. Ahmed, just grabbing something quick," Naomi replied with a warm smile. She picked up a bottle of water and a granola bar, heading to the register when something caught her eye. A white police officer stood at the back of the store, observing her. His arms were crossed, his posture stiff, and his icy blue eyes seemed glued to her every move. Naomi frowned slightly. It was rare to see other officers in this part of town, especially one she didn't recognize. She tried to brush it off, telling herself not to overthink it. After all, she was a captain. Still, the man's presence unnerved her. After paying for her items, she headed towards the exit. Just as she pushed the door open, a voice behind her froze her in her tracks. "Excuse me, ma'am. I need to see some identification." Naomi turned slowly, her expression neutral, though her heart raced. The officer stepped forward, his hand resting casually on the holster of his gun. His voice carried a mix of arrogance and suspicion that immediately set Naomi on edge. He was younger than her, probably in his early 30s, with a chiseled jaw and short-cropped blonde hair. The name on his badge read Officer Chad Whitaker. "I'm sorry, but I don't understand why you're asking for my ID," Naomi said calmly, though her patience was already thinning. "I saw you acting suspiciously in the store," Officer Whitaker replied, his tone cold and condescending. "I'm going to need to see some identification now." Naomi couldn't believe what she was hearing. She had done nothing out of the ordinary, nothing that warranted this kind of treatment. Her anger simmered beneath the surface, but she kept her composure. Acting suspiciously, she repeated, her voice steady. "I'm a police captain. I don't need to show you my ID unless you have a legitimate reason." Whitaker's eyes narrowed. He clearly didn't like being challenged. "I saw you handling merchandise like you were going to steal something. I'm asking you one last time. Let me see your ID." Naomi felt her blood boil. Steal something? She had only picked up a granola bar and a bottle of water. She knew exactly why he was targeting her. It wasn't about her actions. It was about her skin color. Taking a deep breath, Naomi stepped forward, her eyes locked on Whitaker's. "Officer Whitaker, I'm Captain Naomi Bennett with the Central City Police Department. You're going to need a much better reason to detain me." Whitaker's face hardened, his hand tightening on the grip of his gun. For a split second, Naomi wondered if the situation would escalate, but she wasn't backing down. Not this time. "Captain, huh?" Whitaker sneered. "We'll see about that. Turn around and put your hands behind your back." Naomi's heart dropped. She blinked in shock, not believing what she had just heard. "Excuse me." "You heard me," Whitaker said, stepping closer, his voice dripping with contempt. "You're under arrest for suspicion of theft." The small store seemed to close in on her, her mind racing, calculating her next move. As a police officer, she had been trained for hostile encounters, but she had never expected to be on the receiving end of such blatant racism and abuse of power. "I suggest you reconsider what you're doing," Naomi said firmly, though the tremor in her voice betrayed her disbelief. "You're making a huge mistake." Whitaker ignored her warning. He pulled out a pair of handcuffs, the metallic clinking sound echoing in the small store. Mr. Ahmed watched in horror, clearly too afraid to intervene. A few other customers had frozen in place, their eyes wide with shock as they witnessed the surreal scene unfolding. "Turn around," Whitaker barked, his patience running thin. Naomi's hands clenched into fists at her sides. This was an unimaginable violation, and yet here she was being humiliated in public by someone who should have been her colleague, her equal, if not her subordinate. She could see the twisted satisfaction in Whitaker's eyes. Reluctantly, she turned around, placing her hands behind her head. The handcuffs snapped around her wrists with a chilling finality. The situation had taken a devastating turn, but Naomi knew this was far from over. Her breath came in shallow bursts as Whitaker shoved her roughly toward the door. Her wrists ached from the tight grip of the handcuffs, but the physical pain was nothing compared to the humiliation burning deep inside her. The eyes of passers-by followed her as she was marched down the street, their expressions a mixture of confusion and disbelief. "Officer Whitaker," Naomi said, her voice low but steady, "you're making a serious mistake. I'll give you one last chance to walk away before this blows up in your face." Whitaker smirked. "Is that a threat, Captain?" He spat the title out like poison. "Because it sure sounds like one. You think just because you're some big-shot captain you're above the law." Naomi gritted her teeth, holding back the urge to lash out. "This isn't about being above the law. This is about you abusing your power." Whitaker said nothing in response, the smug grin never leaving his face. As they approached his squad car, Naomi spotted pedestrians pulling out their phones, recording the scene. She wanted to scream, to tell them it was all a mistake, but she kept her head high. She wouldn't let this break her. Whitaker shoved her into the back seat of the squad car, slamming the door shut. The air inside was thick and hot, making it hard to breathe. Naomi stared through the wire mesh divider as Whitaker called in her arrest over the radio. "This is Officer Whitaker, badge number 3729. I've apprehended a suspect, black female, mid-30s, Captain Naomi Bennett of the Central City PD. Charge, suspected theft." Her stomach churned as she heard her career, her reputation, reduced to a few cold, careless words. But beneath the fear and anger, a deeper dread took hold. She knew this wasn't just about a stolen granola bar. There was something far more sinister at play. As the car lurched forward, Naomi's mind raced, calculating her next move. She had to clear her name. She had to fight back. And she wasn't going to let Officer Whitaker, or anyone else, destroy everything she had worked so hard to build.